Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Shop Talk. This is Dramashop's official podcast where we discuss theater in process and we talk about productions that are both local, global, and now more than ever, digital and unconventional and shared experiences that we all have as theater artists in our communities. We are live tonight on Facebook Live, so thank you to everyone who is watching here. And then we will actually, we're on our YouTube channel too now, so hello as well. And available later too, if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, where you can find our full catalog of shows. I am Nicole Lossie, and we first want to thank everyone who also has been joining us for our recent long streaming series of virtual programming. We just wrapped up like 10 or more weeks of virtual programming every single week. Actually, Zach is probably going to yell at me because I think it might have been more than that, but we've been doing our live from Dramashop with Zach Flock series, which was a lot of fun. That was like our late night talk show with guests who joined us from some of our local theater favorites to some of our global guests who joined us. We had Michael Cerveris joined us, Lauren Gunderson too, which watch out coming up with for another production from Lauren Gunderson we'll have. And then last weekend, drag icon Alaska joining us to catch up. This was so much fun with her literal childhood best friend and Dramashop's own Elena Manchester. If you missed that one, go back on our Facebook page and watch that one. That was really, really fun to watch. And we do have one more episode of Live from Dramashop coming up, so be on the lookout for that. This past weekend, we did have Jess Flock. She shared her life story with us with Jessica Flock, the dumbest smart person you know, which again, if you didn't get a chance to see that, that is still available on demand on our Facebook and YouTube channel. And this weekend, we have an encore performance of the Blue Bowl monologues, followed by April 3rd, Pop-Up Poe. Again, Alaska will be back to host that. And then Live from Dramashop is back on April 10th, leading up to our next production, Natural Shocks, by Lauren Gunderson, April 17th and 24th. Now, for tonight, we are thrilled to have a really cool episode, and we'll be hosting a roundtable we're calling Shop Talk Live, Page to Stage. Now, with me tonight, she is a delight. You've seen her on our stage as Medium Allison in Fun Home and more recently in Nevermore. I am joined by our community programming manager for Dramashop's creative team, Anna McJunkin. Hi, Anna. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You know, not too bad. We were joking before the show that we are, I'm sure this is great podcast material, but we are hair, close twins lately. So
we're getting there.
Yours is definitely a style. Mine was a result of a pandemic haircut, but yours looks really nice. And I appreciate that we can share that together. But
thank you.
And also joining us tonight, we have the privilege of chatting with, seen most recently, I believe she can correct me if I'm wrong, on the Dramashop stage in Stop Kiss, among many other wonderful performances. She holds a BFA in musical theater from Nazareth College, and we are thrilled to have her join the table tonight. Leah Matthey, welcome to Shop Talk.
Hi. I feel like I should chop my hair off now.
That's always how it goes, though, right? Everybody with the long hair wants the short hair. See, I'm waiting for my long hair to come back. I want my old Fontaine wig back, pre-beginning of the show, Fontaine wig that I once had. Now, I was also commenting before the show, and again, podcast, great material. Your chair, I feel like this is where I've seen you now in Stop Kiss, made an appearance. I love that chair.
Me too. My grandparents were interior designers, so our whole house was full of like their furniture that they picked out. And
that is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome. Now, Anna, can I put you on the spot? Because you showed us something really cool before. There was a painting behind you before we started, and it was really cool. Can we bother you to look at
it? So this is a painting, there's a glare on it, by Natalie Hall. Natalie's an artist out of LA, I think. And it says, "Eat the Rude." And it was like awkwardly putting a glare behind my head, so I took it down. But we've had this in our house. We've lived in, I don't even know how many, several different apartments, and it's been prominently displayed in every one of them.
That is so cool. I love that whenever I'd say this is one of my favorite things about like Zoom times is as sick of we are as all this. I like seeing in other people's, that makes me sound so creepy. I like seeing other people's houses. I
do too.
I just think it's interesting. You get a small curated window into someone else's life. I mean, it's what they're choosing to show you, but I think it's kind of fun, and again, I apologize. That as soon as I heard it. So but
no, I do the same thing. And if people are like in a different place each time, I'm like, ooh, what was this?
Did something happen? You moved locations now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for hanging out and doing our roundtable tonight. We are discussing, this is a kind of a cool topic, and I'm very excited because I'm not super well-versed in directing. So I'm really excited to pick both of your brains about this, translating and what goes into translating the text of a script to the stage. So we'll dive into some of the creative challenges and the opportunities that go into a production centered around the roadmap of a script. So first, I want to start with, Anna, you brought me this idea. Why was this something that you wanted to talk about?
I honestly was thinking about eventually doing some sort of Shop Talk episode inspired by our book club, because every month we have these really cool conversations specifically about all these scripts, and there's always sort of like similar themes no matter what the play is or how different they are from each other. Because that's what we're doing. We're interpreting the script. But one of the things we always try to talk about is what would be challenging specifically for Dramashop if we were to produce this show. And it's really fun to talk about just logistic challenges or stylistic challenges. And I started to think about how much there is there, because I love talking about design and concept and things like that. And Leah's always a regular, reliable on our book club meetings. So I thought it would be fun, and there'd be a lot there to unpack.
I think that's a great thing. And we talked about this too. This is unique from our shop, some of our other shop talk episodes, in that it's kind of a roundtable to kind of discuss these ideas. So I appreciate that you brought this idea and we can talk about it. So I think one place for me to start is kind of feeling as an audience member to this concept. Where do we start if we were going to have this discussion from the perspective of who? The writer, the director, or the actor? Where's kind of a good place to start?
I feel like the writer, in that anytime I'm any part of a show, I like to read the script a bit obsessively. I had a director in college who I adored, who said anytime he's ever done a show, he reads the script every day of the entire process. And I was like, wow, Bob, that's a lot. And then I was assistant directing Hay Fever with him, and I did read it every day, and he did too. And we would come in to every rehearsal, and he'd be like, you know what I noticed today? This is a joke, and we've been missing it for 3 weeks. Or we'd be like, a boiler room is downstairs, and we have it. I mean, little things, but you catch so much if you read the script 1,000 times. And I feel like your show is just so much richer for that. So I think the director and the actor's input are so integral too, but the writer has given you often, or if it's a good script, everything you need.
That's interesting. And now I feel like I need to go back and reevaluate all the shows that I've done where I didn't do that and just read the script, but then focused on, line learning, as a pragmatic side of it. But reading it every day, I'm going to do that now every time I'm in a show.
It's really exciting. As an actor too, to read it every day and catch new things or think of something in a new way. I don't know. It just feels special.
I love that. So then if the writer's putting that down, and this can be to both of you too, what as a writer to provide that can you do to ensure that the most accurate vision of what you're trying to do makes it from your words to the stage? What goes into that, and what are some things that the writer can do and needs to do to make sure that comes through?
That's so tough, because I feel like every playwright has like a really different style for stage direction specifically, and like sometimes they're super long and super detailed. I haven't read Tennessee Williams in a while, but doesn't Tennessee Williams do that?
They're lengthy.
Yeah. And it's almost like a novel where you have this sort of inside look into what's going on. But like on the flip side, if you're doing Shakespeare, there's like hardly any stage directions at all. But like Leah said, everything that you need is going to be in there if it's a good writer. And Shakespeare always sort of tells you through the lines what needs to be happening, but it's a lot harder to dissect that when it's being said as well, and it's not just laid out for you. But I think also depends on how comfortable the writer is with the people who are producing the play taking artistic license and doing their own interpretation and things like that. And sometimes they're fine with that, or like the piece works when you do that, and sometimes they have a really specific intention.
I mean, I'm not a writer, so I can't say, but I do feel like it's probably a balancing act of trusting your actors and, you know, not trying to beat them over the head with that you have to do it exactly as I see it. My idea is 100% right, you know?
Mm-hmm. That's tough too. I mean, Anna, when you said about trusting to make a change or to kind of be a part of how do I want to put it? I've heard of some shows where there are certain things that to get the rights to it, like you have to agree to do something specific. Like, is that something along those lines where I'm trying to think of an example of that, but it's like you have to agree that this character will be played, you know, a certain way or will be a certain gender or will be like, do you think that has something that goes into, you know, are there a lot of shows that do that? I'm not 100% sure when it comes to that.
The one that comes to mind first was last month's book or play, In the Blood by Susan Laurie Parks, because there was a song. Now I'm second guessing myself because the copy I have is that play and another one that goes with it. But there's a specific song that one of the characters has to sing, and there's actually like music, like sheet music for it in the back of the book. And I remember the note being like, it has to be this song. It can't just be any old like spiritual or.
You can't just pick.
Yeah. And it was an original song that the playwright had written. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, and then that does happen. I think not super often, but that was, you know, right at the tip of my brain when you said that. So it is common.
Sure. Leah, if you can still hear us. Oh, can you?
Man, my camera has been funky lately. Anna knows this from book club, so I'm here, just not visible.
Hey, that's totally fine. I'm glad. I just wanted to make sure you were still there, and then
thank you. Yes. I think that can be such a cool, powerful thing to require those things, but it can also be detrimental. I know a lot of playwrights are doing that now, specifically with gender, because they're like, I don't want you gender bending my play. They all talk like that. And
I would imagine they do.
I think sometimes, you know, why are you doing that? I mean, if like Hairspray was one of the first to require that the Black actors are playing the Black roles, which I think is great, and more shows with, you know, people of color, that's awesome if they require that. But if you're doing it because you don't want someone's interpretation of a woman playing a man's role, I think that's crappy, like dumb.
No, that makes sense. Do you think, I guess not in that same way, but do you think that translating the writer's vision has gotten more difficult or at least more complicated, both with stuff like that, like now kind of moving away from that, but then also now translating and trying to direct for theater in COVID too? Do you think that that has kind of changed the whole idea of translating something from what was originally on the page to something on stage or on screen now on theater?
I think less so with, I guess, casting, because we've had challenges with casting certain demographics at Dramashop all the time. But I think doing shows virtually has opened up opportunities for some people. So in that way, it's been nice. But going back to the stage directions in a play, it's given us the opportunity to do some different things. In Silent Sky, when we actually cast an actor to read the stage directions. Yeah. And Lauren Gunderson like wrote this awesome article about it and how it reminded her how powerful the stage directions can be. And I should have reread it, but I remember her saying it was almost like you're being let in on a secret or something when you have almost another character embodying the stage directions. And that's not something, I think, I haven't been to a lot of stage readings at Dramashop, but I don't necessarily know that they were having people read them before.
It kind of depended on the staged reading. This is the only time that I've directed something. I've been trying to think back if I have anything outside of Dramashop. The only time I've directed at Dramashop was we did a show called Clean House a few seasons ago. And we found that we were having trouble with that aspect of it. And looking at it now, of course, 2 seasons later, I may have chosen to do it the way, you all did it with Silent Sky, having someone read it. But what we ended up doing was all of the actors were seated on the stage, because we typically don't have a lot of blocking for a stage reading, but they were seated on the stage, and then we actually had a screen projector behind them that showed the stage directions. Because, is that Sarah Rule? There was a lot of intricacies to the stage directions that we weren't having a easy time conveying a lot of that through the staged reading without them doing the business of it, because sometimes that is what it turns out to be, is the business of what's happening on stage. And so we were able to kind of convey some of the jokes and some of the intricacies of as I spoke, I made this slight head turn with my head that you're not seeing them do, but actually having it written on the screen. So it turned into kind of a larger production than I had intended to, but we did kind of choose to handle it that way too, because stage directions, I don't think I appreciated them as a younger actor as much as I do now. They are so meaty and so weighty. Particularly like a Lauren Gunderson, to have that be a part of it, that it's so important. You cannot skip them. Now, Leah, I don't want to skip you because I can't see you, but if you want to add anything to this part.
No, I was just thinking that's cool to have them on the screen and to have them read, because I think there's some writers who are so wonderful with their stage directions in that sometimes there are jokes that are just for the actors, or little things they have so much personality, I guess, like Paula Vogel and Lauren Gunderson, and a lot, I guess I'm only thinking contemporary females, but they they just add so much, and I think it's exciting to let the audience in on those little things that when they're seeing a full production they miss out on.
It does kind of feel like that. I like the way you said let them in on a secret. I think that's
credit Lauren Gunderson for that, because that was one thing that I did remember specifically from that article that she wrote.
I'll have to post that after the podcast, that article. Right, that was exciting that because she got really involved with the production. She ended up recording a message for the show at the beginning, and I think that's something that was really cool with where we've gone with theater right now, kind of being in all these separate spaces, to be able to connect with playwrights and others that we may not have always connected with. She ended up being a part of that production, really. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and she opened that article by talking about us specifically, which was very exciting, I think, because she really liked how we did it, and it was something new for her. But that reminded me about talking about how weighty and important stage directions can be. It's funny because one of the examples that I was thinking of before this was Nevermore, which had way more stage directions than what we actually did. I don't know that we really didn't do any of them specifically, and there was way more intimacy in that show than we did, if you can believe that. And it's funny because it all worked and we did something really cool with it, but there are just some times where you need to fit the movement of a piece to the space that you have, and the tone of the show that you're doing, and what was written in there wasn't what we were going for. So, and maybe Leah has some stuff to say about that, because I know a lot of mine specifically were just crossed everything out.
Well, I mean that's why they're italicized, because they're optional.
Yep.
No, I mean, I think
that's good.
I mean, what I said earlier about, writers not forcing too hard, I think, I don't know, I go back and forth, because you want to honor the writer's intention, but also, some things just aren't feasible or don't fit with the director's vision. And if it's a full vision that is impeded by them saying at this point, she crosses left and you don't want her to, I don't do it.
Sure. So I don't think, I wouldn't necessarily, one of the questions I was going to ask, but I don't actually think this is a fair question, and this might be why. I was going to ask, is it more important to, when you're translating it for stage, honor what is written or make it fit the production that you're creating as a whole. But I think the bigger answer that I'm getting from this discussion is that it just depends on your space, on your actors, on the time in which you're producing this play, in the climate that you're producing this play. That it might not always make sure you are doing it to the letter. Now, are there directors though you think that maybe that is always the case, or I don't know why I launched that way, but I mean, that was my next thought. Was I was like, because I feel like I've talked to some who it's like, no matter what, like what is on this is, gospel and you must do this. But I mean, that's what I'm getting, at least from this discussion, is almost, it really depends on your circumstances. What do you think?
It definitely does depend. I'm thinking maybe it is more important, or not necessarily important, but easier to produce a show by following the stage directions more strictly if you're putting on like a more traditional musical, I guess. Sure. And this brought to mind a segment from Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella when we did this at the Playhouse last year, because there's like a really long paragraph that's describing what's happening during like an instrumental piece. And it's like Cinderella's trying to get home from the ball, and there are like men turning into animals, and like the pumpkin is like turning back into, or the carriage is turning back into a pumpkin, and all this crazy stuff is happening. I may be combining paragraphs, but I think there's another part where like there's a dragon, and there's like things where it's like she magically transforms into something else, and it doesn't give you any solutions to any of those things. It's like this happens, and you get to figure out how to do it. And I never got to talk to Richard Davis about what he did with this, but he had like every single thing in that paragraph, and any of those like wildly challenging stage directions, he incorporated them somehow. And he like ticked all the boxes, and those were like some of the best moments, I think, in that show, because they were like showstoppers, I guess, because like it just kept like one-upping itself with like spectacle. So I don't know, I think that would be more the case where if you follow it exactly, it's gonna produce the result that was intended when it was written.
I guess maybe as long as you have a good, solid reason, that's why you should change a stage direction in my head. Like, not just because, oh, that's hard, I don't want to figure it out, but like, I have a different vision that is backed up with something.
Mm-hmm. That's still the goal of having the most cohesive production based on all the circumstances that we actually had one question, let's see, about that so far. Does it also depend on an audience, a university community, as opposed to an urban or rural community?
I'm not a fan. I don't know. I think if you're changing something because you want to make your audience more comfortable, my answer would be no. But I realize that's much easier said than done when I'm not running a theater. To be like, no, make them think.
Sure. No, I mean, it's an interesting question. And I mean, I think they bring up an interesting point about university versus non-university sometimes. Like, I know I've had conversations with some of our, not necessarily at Gannon specifically, but some university where it's saying, okay, we're trying to make a production that is as accessible to, a student body who might not be like, they're coming for a class and, they're not interested in, well, I shouldn't say not interested, but I mean, not terribly exposed to a lot of this. So we want to make this as accessible as possible. But I think still on the whole, you do still owe it to them to produce the production that you set out to produce, and not necessarily make huge changes just based on that. So I guess we're still answering yes and also no, but that's okay. I think that also is a valid answer.
Yeah, it's funny. Sean and I talked about this a while ago now, forever ago, pre-COVID. I think if you can still honor the piece, I mean, that's the question. Like, we were talking about Spring Awakening.
I was just thinking about
I saw
Spring
that
Awakening.
years ago at Gannon when it was the first time I saw it when I was a teenager, and I was so excited to see like a racy show. I don't, or not, that's not the right word, but like I remember leaving and being like, that was the coolest thing ever. But he had brought up to me that the scene between Ernst and Hans, when they were getting permission to do the show, they said they can't kiss, which but we all maybe have feelings about it. But Sean was like, okay, well then, they're still gonna touch each other and tear each other's clothes off, and it has the same effect, even though they're not actually kissing. It's not cheapening that moment by just saying, instead we're just gonna have them hold hands. And he said that to me, and I was like, wow, 10 years later, remembering that, I would have sworn they kissed, and that because that moment still had the weight. So I think as long as it is honoring that intention and you are not cheapening it to make your audience more comfortable.
I really like that. I was not in that show. I played in the pit for that show, but you're right. I feel like I would have thought in my head that, yeah, they were intimate. I mean, I think that was the takeaway. The takeaway doesn't need to be they kissed, or earlier you said she crossed left. It doesn't need to be that. It needs to be what was the intention behind it. There was an intimate moment. That's how I'm getting it across. That's how I'm translating it to the stage for you. That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah. But if a university was saying like, I don't want gay characters on stage, then you don't do that show. You don't get to rewrite something like that.
Sure.
I was thinking with Spring Awakening too, there was it might have been Barron's production of it where there's a moment where all the boys are they're basically about to bully another boy, and there's some nudity, and I think Barron's production, I think Emily told us that they did have nudity, and we didn't do that at the Playhouse, but that moment was still like really disturbing for a lot of people. It's a disturbing moment. So I think that's the same kind of thing. As long as you're, creating the same mood and emotion with what was intended, then it can have the same effect.
I really like that point of intention of coming across. I'm reading some of the notes that we were talking about when we talked about interpreting stage directions. I mean, we talked about that, some of the how some specifically pose prohibitive challenges. Some can be interpreted stylistically or read aloud like we did. And you gave me some other examples too about Rain in the Elevator and being completely submerged underwater in Sarah Rule's.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that?
In Eurydice, yeah.
Eurydice.
Leah,
did that spark something for you? It looked like it.
Well, no, I've been thinking about it all day since you sent that to me, and like what the line is, because the other example you gave was Angels in America and the angel coming through the window, and my first thought was, oh, those are totally different. So I spent all day thinking about why. And I think, in Eurydice, the water is so important. I mean, it's a theme throughout. So to say, well, we don't have the capability to make it rain in an elevator, or we don't have the capability to make it rain at the end of Indecent, that changes the whole piece, man. Because, the water has weight and meaning, and the rain at the end of Indecent, that's the catharsis. I mean, that the whole show leads up to that moment, and if you don't have the water, it's just not what it's supposed to be. But if the angel doesn't burst through a wall not that it's not amazing and magical, and it does, because you watch the London productions, crazy. But also, it's still Angels in America if you don't have, 20 feet of fly space above your theater.
That's true.
Well, I'll tell you, I didn't expect to be able to speak to that point that you're talking about, but Angels in America, at the end of the first part, Millennium Approaches, I did some of the tech for that helped with lights and stuff for that show. And that, I tell you what, the choreography of the lights and the sound for that moment, because Dramashop does not have 20 feet of fly space and all this stuff. And if you could see in the back of that booth every single night between Zach and I doing the sound and the lights and then making it look like the angel, when Jess Annunziata shows up, at the top of that, the hall and says, oh, I'm going to cry because I can't think of what it is now, but it was so powerful. But when I just picture her every single time because I know that that's what it is. And that was us figuring out a way to make the angel, appear and really just bring that entire show to like a show-stopping moment but without needing the fly space, the, shooting her out of something or, but just kind of building that moment with sound and light and trying to create that same, what he was still trying to write in that moment too. I get chills when I think about it because it was I wish I could describe it better or I had a picture of it or something, but like that, it's working so hard to still try and meet that moment and translate it.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I'm sorry.
I think we're about to say the same thing. Go ahead.
You mentioned that particular one because all of that, the point that we just made about how like you can't do Eurydice or Indecent without literal water. I have Zach Flock in the back of my mind going, but you can do it with light and effects and sound. And,
sure.
And
I bet he would find a way to make it look like it rained on stage too.
Yeah, and I mean, if you, I don't know, you can make it visually with lighting and like movement of light and sound. Maybe if the actors got wet somehow and came out, like I think there would be ways to do it if you had the limitations that Dramashop has. But it is so much more powerful when you can literally like make it rain on the whole stage. But so like that is one of those things where I'm not sure that it's like completely prohibitive, but it's one of those things where you have to decide if you're willing to make those sacrifices. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I'm 99% sure at the start of Angels in America, isn't Tony Kushner the one who said, like, if you can't have someone, and I'm sure Tony is a wonderful person, but like, if you can't have someone fly in to be the angel, do not do my play.
I think you're right.
I need to find my copy because it's in here somewhere because I want to know if it says that because you might be right, but
I think you are right.
I feel like, I mean, I guess we're coming back to the same point of when is an author, being too precious about their work and when are they not, because who am I as not a writer to say that, but if you're able to have that powerful moment and it really sounds like you guys did, I wish I'd seen it, like that still works for me.
Yeah. So it's impact over intention sometimes. That's one of my like out of context favorite phrases is impact over intention. It works in a lot of, use it in your daily life sometime. And I have found that it is useful in many, impact over intention. But I think that that's something in a small space that helps us a lot as Dramashop. I also think that there's times where it comes in handy at other places that might have, a larger space. I think the Playhouse might excel in things like that when they're working to make something feel more intimate too, because sometimes you have this large space. The first people are, 20 feet away from, over the pit and everything, but still they can do things that make it feel like you're still sitting, if that's what's written and prescribed in the script, that this is a very small, intimate space. I'd love to see how they might handle something like a small mouth sounds.
Oh yeah.
And see how that would feel in a larger space, because they could do something that would somehow make it feel like deaden the sound, put up, something in the house to make it not feel like things are echoing, or to make it still come across the way that, the author intends it to be. You had a couple other examples that I'm interested to see now that we've had this part of the conversation, what you think. The ship catching fire.
Oh, in Octoroon by Brandon Jacobs Jenkins. I don't have my copy of that anymore. I think I gave it to someone, but because I would have wanted to review it because it was a while ago. But they're like in like the third act, there's literally like a large burning ship on the stage, and I don't know. I think that's one of those ones where like if you can't do special effects and like pyrotechnics, I think it would diminish the moment too much, and I don't think that that's something that we could pull off at Dramashop.
That's fair. I couldn't just project on the wall and have it say "ship is burning," and then
someone holds up a cue card that says like "there is fire."
Smoke.
Yeah. Smoke.
That brings up that brings up an interesting one too. I mean, just talking about, I'll be honest, coming into this discussion, I was really mostly thinking about from an actor's perspective of like me reading the words and then like what is a director doing specifically with the actor. But I mean, bringing up the production as more of a cohesive whole, I think makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad that that's something that you brought up, because I was not thinking that at all. I mean, that's like, but I mean, I think maybe circling back now, we kind of talked about, you know, the effects and the, you know, if you have all those things and the sound. I think coming back a little bit to the acting side, how do you think, like if I'm coming into it as an actor, I've worked with some actors, and this is not an Erie, I will totally own up to this. It's like when I used to live somewhere else, where it was like, I'm going to make every character like my own. I'm going to do like, I'm going to put my stamp on it, and it doesn't matter. Like, do you think actors like that can potentially pose a difficulty to like a director's vision or a writer's vision? Or do you think that if a writer did a good enough job putting it on the stage, that doesn't matter, that the actor can't like tamper with that? What are your thoughts? I'm throwing them today. I don't mean to, I promise. This is just really interesting.
No, they're good questions.
Yeah.
I mean, I think how exciting it would be to be a writer, to see your character one way, and then to have someone on stage like go see your show and be like, who is that? And like, if it works with the vision of the show, I think if you're going in and saying, no, this is how I'm playing this character, and it's not in keeping with what the director wants and what works with the show, that's another thing. But I don't know, I guess this is not cohesive, I'm sorry, but I did a show in Rochester. It was a new work, and it was really cool. The writer was there, and as we were going through the show, we were learning things about the character, and I was like, oh my gosh, like she was in love with this character the whole time. And like, she was like, oh my God, when I was right, I never thought of that. And it was so exciting to have someone willing to, you know, have that flexibility too. But I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Just
no, that's really cool to have a writer say, I didn't think of that. Like, you did this and I wasn't. That's really cool.
And why do we do live theater and different productions of the same show if we don't want them to change and grow and move into new spaces, you know? That's what I was trying to say. I could have just said that without the long story.
I think I had pretty much the same thing, I guess, because you do want to bring a little bit of yourself to the character.
Definitely.
This reminded me of in Jess Flock's show, she talked about playing Jean Brody and how she just like completely mimicked Maggie Smith from the movie the whole time. And we're always told not to do that as actors. They're like, don't just like mimic, that's not acting. So there's like a balance though, because I remember being like in theater school, and there were all these very acting is my personality type people, and they would just go like way overboard. And if that is clashing with the director's vision or with whatever theme or concept you're trying to convey with this production that you're doing, it can cause a lot of problems, because those actors would tend to get like pretty defensive or precious about their choices. So, but that, I feel like that doesn't happen that much, because usually people, they want to be part of the team and, you know, contribute to some like greater beautiful whole, which is like what we all want to be doing as people who like theater. But yeah, I think generally, no matter how different people play the same character, it's still the same lines, and it's gonna, you know, ultimately get the same message across, with a few variations, I guess. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, I've seen some of the same productions, you know, in different places. I mean, we did Nevermore at Gannon 10 years ago. It's so weird to think that I still feel like sometimes, like I'm like in my early 20s. Like I just, that I look, I mean, I still work at my alma mater, so there's also that complication. But like, and then I saw it at Dramashop when you all did it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love that this is the same show. And I could tell, I was like, this is the same show, but it's also a different show. Like, it's also different, but I don't think that either one of them strayed from what was intended with Matt Connor's piece. And we had kind of some minimal contact with him when we did it, just because I don't know if the show was relatively new or what. He was kind of like, he was one of those who kept kind of reaching out to groups that were doing it because he was either interested in it, or like he was like, hey, how's it going? If you got any questions, like, let me know. And it was really, really cool. And so we had a little bit of contact with him, and like answered a couple just kind of like higher reaching questions about like, is this kind of the right feel for this character? Is this, because I think for me, a lot of the translating of, you know, script to stage has a lot to do with, we talked about this a little bit earlier, with the impact of something, even if you're not doing the action, the feeling that you get across, like that becomes the major takeaway of translating something from something written to something that you see, is the feeling that it emotes, the lesson that you take away, the big picture story that you leave with. So I think that was kind of nice to be able to say to him, like, is this, you know, kind of, are we making it too poppy? Are we making it like too, you know, self-indulgent? Is it, you know, is it supposed to be this? And I think that gives you a lot of liberty as a director, as an actor, as, you know, a designer, when you get that confirmation that like, yeah, I'm still translating it the way that they wanted their audience to feel when they saw it. You know, like, I mean, because you guys did kind of a cool, like, it was, I hesitate to use the word steampunk because I never know if I'm using it right. But like, it was kind of like a steampunky, gothy kind of vibe, right?
Yeah.
But I still got the same feeling that I did when we did it, where it was like I was in a petticoat with a big bonnet and I couldn't hear anything because I had this crazy bonnet that covered all of this. And like, it was hot. And it was like hot, not in the good way. Like, it was, it was really, really hot. But I still got the same feeling from it. I didn't think like, oh, that changed the way that this really came across. It still translated. And I guess that's exactly why you say it that way. Like, it translated really well. And it was a neat way to see that. Because it's still, like you said, it's the same words, it's the same songs, it's the same characters, it's the same emotions. It might just be packaged differently. And I don't think that hurts the translation of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I think, though, that there are so many shows that the original production is not the best form of it. And like, some shows change so much. Like, the big one that comes to mind is Cabaret. Like, the original production of Cabaret, no shade to Joel Grey, but it was it was a lot more fun. It was a lot more, you know, Cabaret. Sure. But then the 98 production, they were like, no, we're going dark. And they changed, you know, like, Two Ladies was initially done with two ladies, and it was just about the MC having two girlfriends. And then it became this, you know, the MC became a bisexual character. And it was a commentary on, you know, how we hid that at that time. And they changed the ending, and he was, spoiler for anyone who has not seen Cabaret, turn this off, he's in a concentration camp, and it changes the entire show. And when Kander and Ebb wrote it, they didn't intend that probably. And I think how wonderful that it became that, and that I would assume every future production of Cabaret was influenced by a director being like, you know what, this isn't that, I see a higher purpose of this show, and I'm going to do it even if it's not what was intended.
That's really cool. I didn't
betterment. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I didn't know that about the 98 production.
Oh man, that production I could talk about all day. That was Alan Cummings, who then came back to do it 20 years later, and it was just
wow.
so good.
I need to check that out.
That's interesting. Man. I don't think I, because when I think of the Alan Cumming, I mean, I think of more his like now, like playing it more recently, like, but I mean, that is really cool. And that's an interesting idea of, can a show evolve and then that be what that show is to everyone else now? Like it's, and now that's what it's based on from then on, is that version of it. That's, I'm trying to think of other ones that didn't start out. If there are any. I want to say Rent, but I don't think that's the right answer to it. Like that had a different feel at first and then changed after the death of Jonathan Larson. I don't like to reference Rent always, but I mean, I think sometimes that may have just the vibe of the show changed, but I don't necessarily think the writing of it the actual message may have changed.
Well, I think some shows, when they've been around so long, can't help changing. Just with, we see like the Carousel revival that was just done. They absolutely took stuff out, and some people are mad. I think they took away a slap or a line. Oh, the line about someone hitting you and it not hurting at all, because they were like, we're not gonna glorify domestic abuse. We recognize that. We talk about that in a much more mature way in our society now. And, we want to do this show. We want to tell this story, but we don't want to cause the pain that this line could cause. And I think I understand the debate about it, but I think that's great that we're allowing that show to grow and change and be different in this iteration.
Yeah, I think that's something that I don't know how long that's been happening, but it's come to more attention in the last few years because people are realizing that that's like true generational harm that is being caused by those things. And that reminds me, going back to Nevermore, a conversation that we had with Sean about Edgar's character and when the play was written. I think it was like 2001. And he was a lot more like sexually aggressive, and it was supposed to be like hot that he was like doing sort of non-consensual, like I'm gonna take her sort of thing. And Sean was like, I'm not doing that.
Nope.
We're not doing that. And I remember Elena was there and she checked what year it was written, and she was like, yeah, that makes sense. Because things even just as recently as 2001 were really different. I think about like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and like what was considered like romantic in that show. It's like very similar. But anyway,
that's interesting.
Things, they do evolve for the the social and cultural circumstances. That's something that we've talked about with book club a lot too. I wish I could think of an example. There was one maybe like 3 or 4 months ago that we were like, this might not be the best time to do it. Sometimes we're like, this is the perfect time to do it. But yeah, more often it's that, because we like to do challenging things or read challenging things.
I'm trying to remember what book club that was, but I remember that.
Yeah,
I think there are a lot of shows, if they're older than 5-10 years old, they're going to be a lot different than when they were written. And I think updating them is just the responsible thing to do, because why just pretend that like this was seen as okay, the author thought this was okay, so I'm keeping it that way because I don't care what message I put out on my stage. Like, that's irresponsible.
Sure. And I mean, we talked about just a little bit ago too about just getting the feeling and the whole the feeling as a whole across, that you can still do that and honor what the piece, should be as a whole without keeping some of those damaging pieces. I mean, you can still perform things that, or I mean, if it gets to the point where just too much of it is, they don't do that show. There's also that option. And I feel like there are some times where people are just like, but we have to do this because it's a classic. You absolutely don't. I promise you. You absolutely don't. There are so many new shows coming out every year, and you can pick any of them. So
there are so many shows. I feel like people forget that sometimes, or they'll be like, well, I know I don't really have the people or the resources or the whatever to do the show, but so do I just not do it? Yeah.
Yes, you just not do it, and again, this is not pointed at any particular place. I'm not even thinking of a particular example. I just feel like that's something that I think of where it's like a high school's show thing. I feel like in my mind, where it's like, well, we have to do insert classic musical here because it has a huge chorus and we have a lot of people who want to be in the show, so we have to do this. And it's like, well, yes, but it has racist undertones and sexism very, very heavily, and this, and it's like, yes, it might have come out in a different time, but it was wrong then, we just didn't talk about it, and it's still wrong now. That's really where we are.
Yep.
And we don't need to teach our students that it's still okay.
And if you are going to do it, there nope, don't want to go there. If you are going to talk about it, talk about why it's wrong, and talk about the fact that, like, point to it and say, this was wrong then, and it's wrong. I mean, Disney this is a whole different topic, but like how Disney started to put all of those disclaimers on some of the stuff on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Like, that's an interesting thing, because they're not saying, oh, it wasn't wrong then and it is now. They're like, well, no, it was wrong then, but it was treated differently for whatever reason, and now we know better, so we do better. And that's, we can do this same thing, still, produce things that are appropriate to produce where we can, but then be responsible about it and make the choices that still complete the production, make it a whole production for our audience and for our purposes, but without harming anyone, because we don't have to do that. We have a choice not to, and it's up to us not to.
Yeah.
But, well, this is all really cool. I mean, I could keep talking to you ladies about this, for this is one of those topics that you can kind of go on some tangents with, as far as like I said, I was thinking actor, like I was thinking from the like actor and like director of like, how do I look at a script and put this, but thinking of it from the perspective of, the dramaturg who's going to look at this and say, how do I research this show in a responsible way that is going to help them produce it? And, from the set dresser and the person who's going to make it rain on stage, how do we make that, possible? But we are coming up, if you can even believe it, on an hour of talking about this. And I wanted to ask you, are there any final thoughts that you wanted to make sure that we include in talking about taking something script to stage before we wrap up today? Either of you on the floor.
One of the notes that I had made, Leah, were you at the Sarah Kane Blasted book club meeting? Okay. Because she's like the main playwright that I think of when there are like absolutely prohibitive stage directions, just logistically, because Blasted had a lot of just like violence and gore that is like not really, I don't know, you can interpret that stylistically, but it was just like really difficult to do at a place like Dramashop, where it's important to the script and they talk about like specific things that happen, and it would have just been a lot. But aside from that, it takes place all in a hotel room that like gradually like gets blown up basically and like gets ruined and destroyed. And near the end of the play, one of the characters is literally like buried in a hole in the floor with like just his head sticking out. And that's something you can do like with a trap door, but like Dramashop doesn't have the stage for that. And that's not even like the most outlandish thing that she has in that play, or any of her plays. Leah, did you talk about one of her other ones that was more like fantasy?
Oh, 448 Psychosis.
Yeah.
That's something that you could do anywhere. Yeah, I mean, so I guess it's, you really want to do Sarah Kane and you can't blow up your stage. That's a great alternative. They're not the same at all, but...
They were just talking about 5 lesbians eating a quiche and how one of the characters had to explode outside of the house and how they did do that. I know I was not able to see this production and now I feel terrible about it. We just had Lacey Hensley on Live from Dramashop the other night talking about how they were able to facilitate that of she like eats the quiche and goes outside, and then they threw, I want to say it was spaghetti sauce against the window to...
Wow.
That didn't sound graphic when I was going to say it in my head, but now I feel like it was, so I apologize. But like they threw against the window to facilitate that, and like, so that's another possibility of like, I mean, granted, if your set has to explode, that's different. But I mean, if there are other things, but like, I mean, the buried up to your head, you could kind of do the Friends sandcastle move of build a sandcastle of the without the sand, but
it was just one of those things where like everything that she had in that play was like very specific, and she was just like, this happens. And when we talked about that play, we were like, that can't happen. Like, we don't have the tech skills or the budget or the lumber to make that happen.
I like that some of the things were not hypothetical, but they were like the tech skills and the lumber. That's a very specific need, and that's understandable that would be something that would be kind of a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Very
so
cool.
I guess, but that's kind of like how we always close out our book club meetings. Like, could Dramashop do this? You know, first and foremost, could it even be possible? And then should they? Is also usually something that we touch on. So, and we always have like really cool conversations, and then we always kind of leave being like, we should do this show.
I
Or we
like
should
that.
tell
Could
someone
we
else.
and should we? Those are two very different questions, and they're very important ones.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Leah, anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
No, I'm good. I mean, talked about Paula Vogel. We talked about book club. I mean, that's a good day in my book.
It's kind of the dream, you know. So we've got another book club coming up. That will be what's today, the 24th. So it'll be the 15th of next month. That's correct, right, Jada?
Yep, I think maybe the 17th. I don't remember.
17th. It's
there.
on our Facebook page. All of the events you can go on dramashop.org and see not only which of the plays are coming up, but then you can also go to dramashop.org and buy any of the books. And well, I want to ask you this too, real quick. Do you have to have read the play to come and participate in a book club meeting?
You sure don't?
How
I will
delightful.
admit to everyone that I moderated book club this past Saturday, and I didn't even finish the play.
See? So
And we still had a really nice conversation.
We did. That's not ideal, though. Normally, we want the moderator to have read the play, but it worked out.
Sure. I mean, I've done a couple where I think one of them, when I wasn't able to finish it, I was able to do research on it and kind of like learn what the basic idea of it was. And I'd still have just a really fascinating conversation. I mean, I love it. There are different people who come every week to book club. So if you have come to book club, thank you so much. And if you haven't yet, please come and check it out. You know, it's moderated by a really fun group of people. We encourage you to read the play. You can purchase them through us, through Dramashop, or if you already have them, wherever you want to get the plays. The important part is just to enjoy the piece and then talk about it with really interesting people and have fascinating conversations. So check that out on dramashop.org and check out our Facebook page. Leah, Anna, thank you so much, both of you, for being here with us for Shop Talk Live. And this was really, really fun. Thank you both.
It was. Thank you so much for having us.
Of course. Everybody else coming up this weekend, we have an encore performance of the Blue Bull Monologues. That's coming up. Then followed the following weekend by Pop-Up Poe, hosted by Alaska. Then that we'll have live from Dramashop again on April 10th, coming up into our next production, next main stage production, Natural Shocks by Lauren Gunderson, April 17th and 24th. This is Dramashop's Shop Talk. It's our official podcast sponsored by Gannon University's Schuster Theater, which they still have more performances of musical. Wait, I'm going to say it wrong. Nope. Musical of Musicals, the musical online. Is that right? Do either of you know? I think that's
I'm
right.
not sure.
I'm pretty sure.
That is also on our Facebook page, and you can follow them to Gannon University's Schuster Theater. They have more productions coming up online this weekend, too. So make sure to check them out and thank them so much for their sponsorship of this and their support of us here at Dramashop. We're available here, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Shop Talk is produced by me, Nicole Lassie. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you all for joining. We are Dramashop, and this is Theater in Process.
Yay!